I'm with Chad Holland, the senior pastor of King of Kings Ministries. And Chad, we're talking about the situation in Ukraine. What were your thoughts when you saw what was happening in Ukraine?
Well, I think for someone in our position that deals with Israelis and deals with Jewish people, we were immediately concerned about the Jewish people in the Ukraine and in Russia. I think we all, as a body of Messiah, we want to see people safe. We want to see them healthy. And anytime we see war, that's something we're praying that peace will come. So our immediate response was, let's pray for peace. But then how can we help the Jewish people who now we know they are leaving by tens of thousands? So what can our role be when we see both Ukrainian and Russian refugees at this time?
Are Jews arriving from Ukraine now into Israel?
Yes. So the first wave is already arriving. The numbers we were given, and of course, when I say we've been given, we're working as directly as possible with the social services here in Israel, with the Ukrainian embassy at the same time, and with a few of our representatives in the military. And so we're getting what we hope is really good information. Out of 44 million people that lived in the Ukraine before the conflict, almost 3 million have now become refugees leaving the country. Now, we also were told that 200,000 Ukrainians are Jewish by lineage and have the right to make aliyah, that is, to move to Israel and become a citizen. So we don't know how many will make application, but what we were told is the first 10,000 are being processed now, and we've already seen some of those families start to arrive.
Wow, so you got 10,000 coming already?
That's the expectation, is that the first wave, and that first wave is going to be the first 2 months. We're expecting 10,000 to be processed through the Ministry of Interior and to start arriving into Israel. It will overwhelm the system for a while until we catch up, but on our end, we're looking at how can we help people both when they arrive here in Israel, and then how can we help people that are suffering still in the Ukraine?
Now, sanctions have been placed on Russia. So are Russian Jews also leaving Russia too and coming here?
Yes. So the first wave, of course, was much more emergency-oriented because it was Ukrainians obviously fleeing. But within the last week, we've been contacted by several Russian friends, believers, the Jewish community members. And now we're starting to see some Russians concerned about their own government, their own country, their own safety, and they are now also beginning to leave Russia. Yeah.
And how is the church responding to this influx of Jews coming into the country?
I'm very proud of the body of Messiah in Israel, and I say that broadly to all of the congregations, ministries, and churches, both Jewish and Arab in ministry. They've done very well to all try to coordinate, to try to communicate, whether it be helping with humanitarian aid or finances. The body of Messiah has done a really good job. I'm proud of King of Kings Network for how we've contributed as part of the wider body. But yes, I think we've been mobilized, we've been active, we've been as alert as we have been in quite a while.
Are there many different ministries responding to this crisis?
There are. At first, it was a little difficult to try to figure out and coordinate who was doing what. But we let the dust settle for a few days, and now it's become a little bit more clear how we can help. So on the King of Kings side, and I can only speak for our network of congregations and ministries, here's how we've been able to help. Primarily through our distribution centers and our locations, we've been able to provide humanitarian aid boxes and packages, bags and boxes, for the Ukrainian families that are physically arriving. They're arriving and they're being put into host homes. They're being put into temporary hotel situations while they're being processed. And when they arrive, they need clothes. They need blankets and jackets and shoes, food. They need personal hygiene items, toys for the kids. And so we're providing these packages for the families that arrive. We have 5 points of distribution at the moment. And anytime one of those 5 points calls us and says another family has arrived, we have a team that has prepared the packages in the distribution center, and they deliver the packages to the location where the family has arrived. So that's working out pretty well. It's very efficient. It's only made possible because of the generosity of King of Kings locally and the King of Kings members around the world.
I imagine people have arrived with nothing, and they're coming to a country where maybe they don't even speak Hebrew.
So, of course, Israel is already known in its modern state as a young country, 73 years old in its modern state, is a heavily immigrant country anyway. People immigrating from all over the world, from Russia. We've had obviously away from Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, etc. Other parts of Europe, from France and Ethiopia, America, Canada, Australia. So we're pretty adept to welcoming new immigrants, but typically they're not all coming because of a military conflict. So this is a little bit of a new twist for us. They're coming with such an emergency, literally with one bag in their hand. How do we help them at that point? So it's a little bit new from that angle, but not new to the country, because the country is primarily made up of immigrants.
Is this going to be a welcome challenge for the church in the future? Because you're going to have all these new people in and possibly new believers coming into the church.
One of the things we learn from the scriptures is to help people in the physical aspect of life as we present the love of Yeshua, the love of God with them. And for us as a body of Messiah here in Israel, this gives us a great chance to grow and learn how to serve people, learn how to feed people, keep them warm, get them into a safe shelter, and to do all of that in a practical way, to show them the love of God in a practical way, so that when we're able to share, when those doors open to share the message of salvation, a genuine trust and friendship is already built. So I think this is really good for the body of Messiah. It's activated us, it's ignited us, it's unified us, but I don't think it's going to be the end. I think this is really just the beginning of a long season and a major wave of Aliyah. We're talking about the Ukraine today, we're talking about Russia, but we understand that soon many from South America will start to come. And as anti-Semitism grows in the world, again, I think we're going to see major waves of immigration, and we want to be ready for that.
And of course, some of the communities that surround Ukraine as well, they may get a little bit fearful, and they may say, that's it, we're leaving our countries because of the situation.
That's true. You're going to have a ripple effect here. How far will Russia go? How successful will Putin and his government be? And if you live anywhere near those borders, I think there's going to be some trepidation, some concern, what's going to happen. The other part that's been concerning people in Europe has been the rise of the Islamic communities and the Sharia law and things that have been put into place in these different communities. We've had immigrants come from all over Europe these last few years, and their concern hasn't been war. Their concern has been the rise of Islam and Islam going unchecked in their countries, and they don't really like the dynamic that's happening. They don't feel safe. Rise in the feeling of anti-Semitism. So you have, again, a rise of anti-Semitism. You have a concern with Islam growing in Europe. You have wars, countries on the borders, and all of that is a concern why people are making Aliyah again.
Now, we're seeing bad pictures on the news. Do you think some of these Ukrainians are going to need counseling when they come here in the land?
I think so. But I think also Israel is a great place to get counseling, and here's why. Inside of Israel, we deal quite often with military campaigns, with being attacked and missiles fired and incendiary balloons released over us and tunnels dug on our borders. And these are terrorist acts, and we deal with them a lot. We have a great military. But inside of Israel, military service is mandatory, both male and female, 2.5 years. It's very rare that our young adults have gone through their 2.5 years of service and then reserve service without being in some kind of military conflict. And that comes with it the need for trauma counseling, PTSD counseling. And so at King of Kings, we've been blessed to grow in our ministry family 3 different locations of the counseling center. And we've now offered that counseling center and some of its services to incoming refugees.
So God has been preparing you as a ministry to be ready for some of these people that are going to be coming over.
That's right. And I know we're not able to serve every single family, but to the ones that are open to what we have to offer, whether it be packages of humanitarian aid, relationship, our feeding soup kitchens, we serve families with hot kosher meals, and then our counseling center. I hope we're able to make an impactful statement to those coming that Yeshua loves them, that God loves them, has not forgotten them, and we want to serve them on multiple levels, not just one level.
It's very sad when we see war break out in a country, but are you seeing God is using this as a fulfillment of biblical prophecy just to bring the Jews home?
Throughout history, we see an ebb and a flow of what happens with Jewish people around the world. When they are too comfortable in a foreign land, we call that the diaspora, by the way. When they're too comfortable in the diaspora, typically some kind of pressure will be applied or will be allowed, even if it's not caused by God, it's allowed. And that pressure will remind the Jewish people of their one true covenant home, the land of Israel that was promised to them in their forefather Abraham, the tribes of Israel. So on the one hand, we don't want war. We don't want conflict. We don't want death and violence. On the other hand, we see how God moves in strategic ways, even in these tragic moments, because those pressures applied, whether it be Islam or whether it be terrorism or whether it be anti-Semitism or war, those pressures are applied historically, and it causes a major wave of immigration back to Israel. So yeah, I see the hand of the Lord being used inside of it, although I would not be the one to describe that God's hand is causing it.
Why did you want to get involved?
Well, for us, it's a kingdom principle, right? What are we here on earth to do as a saved remnant of people? We're here to show the love of God in a practical way and to hand out the invitation of salvation to their God and their Creator. If we look at the life of Yeshua in the text of the Bible, we're going to see that he feeds people, he counsels people, he heals people, he's patient while they don't understand, but he's also a good teacher and a preacher of the gospel. And if we're going to be made in his image and do his ministry, we're the hands and the feet, we're the temple, then for us it becomes very natural that we want to be involved in humanitarian aid. We want to be involved in congregation and church planting. We want to be involved in counseling and welcoming new immigrants into the country. So for us, it's a very natural fit to what we read in the Bible.
Now, Palestinians have been trying to compare themselves to the same as Ukraine. Is it the same or is it different?
First, I don't claim to be a political expert on these matters, but we don't think it's the same because, on the one hand, Israel is not attacking Gaza or the Golan. We're not attacking. We're not the instigators of conflict. So I think that's very different from Russia attacking Ukraine. On the other hand, Israel is the rightful and legal owner of the occupied territories. Sometimes people, maybe they don't understand that it's the term occupation is really backwards from what many in the media describe it to be. The Palestinian people are occupying Israeli territory, not the other way around. We are not trying to occupy theirs, it's ours, we're allowing them to occupy it. On the other hand, we are allowing them to govern themselves as long as that government can keep safety and health in those regions. What some of your listeners may not understand is how many Arab-speaking Arabic people live peacefully inside the Israeli borders. We have Arabic schools. We also have Arabic seats in our Knesset, in our cabinet, in our government. So we don't have a problem. Israelis and Jews don't have a problem with living peacefully with Arabs. I think what happens is when you're involved with extreme Islam or terrorism, you're part of Hamas or Hezbollah or things like this, then those terrorist groups are giving a bad name to what would normally be more friendly Arabs. And so when they become aggressive militarily, Israel defends, and now it looks like a conflict between Jews and Arabs. It's not really a conflict between Jews and Arabs. It's a conflict between Israel and terrorist groups that have really dominated those regions.
What's your prayer for Jews fleeing?
We would, first of all, we would welcome them and say, come home. This is where we want you to be anyway. But a prayer for safe passage, a prayer for their families, health along the way, and a prayer that they wouldn't become embittered, that they would see this as a new opportunity. As tragic as it is for how many lives we are losing, and we are sensitive to that and prayerful, we're praying that God would use this somehow to bring the Jewish people from the Ukraine, from Russia, from Belarus, or surrounding territories that are becoming concerned, that they would come home and they would feel welcome when they get here.
Are you excited about what God is doing at the moment?
We are excited on the one hand. Of course, again, I want to be sensitive to all of the loss. But we are excited because we can see the prophetic acceleration of what's happening in the world with the world powers. Of course, I think we all are fairly well read about what Russia's intentions are, and then how that relates to China, how that relates to North Korea and Iran and Syria. And that collective group and what they want to accomplish is very different than what we in Israel, being the only democracy in the Middle East, what we would want to accomplish with our European and our North American allies. But I do see a prophetic acceleration here, so I'm excited for that regard, because I believe that opens the door for Israel's destiny to be fulfilled, and to that destiny to be shown as that which preaches the gospel and unlocks a great harvest at the end of the age.
Although this may not be the Mog and Magog war, it is showing how things are developing and moving forward, and the Bible's coming true, isn't it?
It certainly does. And again, I'm not an expert in eschatological studies or world and historical politics, but I do understand. I've read many who are starting to make those connections. I'm not making those connections, but I do see very clearly how the prophetic acceleration, how the end of the age, the book of Revelation is all starting to unfold right in front of our eyes. And listen, we're a chosen generation that gets to be part of that. I think that's an honor, but I also think it reminds us to be prepared, to be the virgins with oil in our lamps ready to go at any moment, to be the hands and feet of the Messiah in these very trying times. 3 times the book of Revelation calls for the faithful perseverance of the saints. And so what that means to us is get ready for a rough ride, but as darkness grows, the light of Messiah grows even brighter. So we expect a great harvest. So I'm excited for that aspect.
The Bible talks about God brings the Jews back in unbelief and then they get saved. So you're maybe going to be very, very busy in the future, are you?
Well, again, there's a lot of times when you are planting new ministries and planting new congregations, maybe in a city or a village that has no gospel representation, people would say, well, then why are you planting something? It's not that strong, it's not that big, it's not thousands of people. And what we often respond to them is, we want a healthy leadership team on the ground. We want strong small groups and a prayer team and a strong spiritual community, even if it's small. And we don't build that only for what exists now. We build it for what's coming in the future. Somebody has to be ready to receive all of the new immigrants coming, preach the gospel, to make disciples, to teach them the truth of the Word of God. And when we plant a new campus or a new congregation, we have the future in mind, not just the present.
What's your website for maybe people who'd like to give and help with the ministry of helping Jews come back to the land here?
Yeah, thank you. So the network of King of Kings, if you want to just see what we're all involved in across the nation, it's kkm.network. That stands for King of Kings Ministries. But kkm.network, that will give you all of our affiliated locations and partners. If you want to go to the congregation that I pastor personally, it's kkcj.org, King of Kings Community Jerusalem. So kkcj.org on both sites. They can get more details. How can they be involved? Be involved in prayer, be involved in volunteerism, be involved in financial giving. A lot of options there.
Okay, Chad, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on the program today. I appreciate your heart and the heart of all your listeners and supporters. So thank you for doing this and giving us time.